Alright, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy, D Rhythm, and we back with another video. Excuse me, I'm a little tired today, but I had to, make sure we hopped on today. I got so busy, been so caught up with studying and, a few other things I had going on, but I'm here on the podcast, and hopefully y'all doing good. But I had a few different things because I definitely did. I was, eager to hop on the podcast, to discuss a few different things. Just talking about like training effects, right? So this is gonna be a nice duration podcast. And we're talking about training training tactics and maneuvers and things like that. So we're gonna be hopping over in a few different arenas. First things first first thing we want to talk about is mainly it's the structure of like within a new age of information, constantly obtaining information, and like how you apply it and how you use that information and how you store and file and compartmentalize information with all the information, so you don't have memory overload. And memory overload is one of the most number one I want to say threats, and is it in just new in one of the number one threats nowadays. Because of the amount of information and everything, studying, want to learn more and that sort of thing, and learning just scientific terms and everything, right? The body and nutrition and all that sort of thing. The number one thing for I want to talk about in this video for sure is most certainly compartmentalization and being able to organize information. I always organize information. But every time I say organization, I always say the three slots, right? You got files, you got files, folders, and programs, or files, folders, and icons, right? So let's store let's organize and let's store our information or our content, whatever we learn, in within files, folders, and programs, right? Files, folders, and icons, right? That's how we always say it, right? So organization, right? Files, folders, and programs. So when we talk about organization, it's always difficult, right? When you study something and it's like compartmentalization can be difficult sometimes, right? How can you utilize the information you learn? Because I'm one of those, I know me, I'm one of those type of people. When I learn something, I'm always immediately trying to figure out how I can apply it and how I can use it, and it just takes me a long time to get through, all the information, right? Because I'm so focused on details, right? So in terms of like trying to study and just go through the tactics of tactics of just acquiring information, processing it, and sorting it, that sort of thing, is very difficult, right? It is difficult, right? Because you have to process that information, right? Your brain has to literally process that information, and it has to circulate through many different neurons, right? It has to go through many different parts of the brain and circulate through it, and to the point to where completely registers, and then you can sort of maneuver on, right? And that's not even it. That's not even the main thing. Like, the thing is, like, it's easy to forget information, right? That's really what it is, right? It's easy to forget information, like, because you can learn, vitamin A, its functions, and the foods that go along with it, vitamin C, and all this sort of thing, and just the facts and the details of certain scientific information, and then it's just like you could easily just forget about it even after you write it down, right? Even after you write it down, you store it somewhere, but it's just a matter of what information belongs in what place, that sort of thing. It just a lot of it depends on where you're willing to put, certain information, because there's always more information to come through. And the important thing about compartmentalizing information and organizing is the fact that if you organize it like, because there's always new information coming in, right? And you got to be able to move on. And if you can't move on, then it's just like you're stuck. So you ain't got no choice but to sort of engage and sort of like do extra things. And, you don't have a choice, but to like sort of, engage and do extra things and sort of, just move things like that. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to, move on and compartmentalize the new information that comes in, right? Because you got too many things in the vault, right? And it's that easy for your mind to just get caught up in that memory overload, right? And another thing is too, like, I'm almost, that sort of thing, right? And it's hard, right? I know I've always talked about, precision versus aim, right? When you come into a function, you come into, with precision, right? And precision, is very important, right? So like all the information, not necessarily, you might not necessarily need, right? So just, as long as you keep, have a perspective, coming in what you do, you can sort of block out information that you don't need, right? So I do always, like to say precision versus aim, right? Saying coming with precision, So that is true. That's just true as well. But another thing when it comes to studying, for me specifically, I know when I study, like, it's hard for me to even get into studying, because I ain't gonna lie, like, when I get to studying, I'm not even going to say studying, right? I'm going to say training, period. Certain things that you train, certain things that you engage in, right, in life, may be difficult than other things that you train, or this may be difficult than other things that you get engaged with, right? And for these specific things, it would be important to give yourself incentive, in order to be able to function, right? We talk about spacing, right? On the basketball court, you have spacing, right? In terms of functioning through outlets, right? And you have things that you're trying to get done, right? It's important, to have spacing, right? So that way the defense, it takes a longer time for the defense to be able to ripple up and actually, sort of ripple up the offensive set, right? It really can't ripple up the offensive set when you have proper spacing, because now everything is spaced out. You can see the whole floor, and you can sort of implement the things that you need to implement, right? So proper spacing is important, and sometimes it's hard to get proper spacing when you get into outlets that you don't want to do, like certain things that you struggle with, right? Certain things you struggle with doing. these things, you still have to have proper spacing. So sometimes it might be good. This is where you would give yourself incentive and set timers. We talk about time therapy, right? Time therapy, right? So making sure that you're always engaging with time in a sense to where always being engaged, with what time it is, what day it is, and the location of where you're at, right? So time therapy, meaning that, okay, we have proper spacing in the things that we need to get done. But now there are some things that we, just literally just struggle trying to do, right? For various reasons, for reasons, right? So these things that we struggle with doing, we have to give ourselves incentive, and we have to set a time. Like, okay, I'm going to engage in this activity for 30 minutes. Right? You know what I'm saying? I'm not necessarily going to go to try to extend, because I know how long I can go on the basketball court. I know how long I can go in the weight room. I know how long I can go in some of these other outlets. But specifically for this outlet, whatever it may be for your case, now I'm going to limit myself to 30 minutes. And I'm going to give myself incentive afterwards. Right? So now I can do this. But then I can come out and I can rest my brain, right? And, depending on how much effort you put into your craft, right, and how much energy you exert into your craft will dictate how much energy, a lot of times or sometimes can dictate how much energy you have into weaknesses, right? You may not have as much energy to pour into certain weaknesses that you still have to be able to do, come around full circle and do, right? So you have to accommodate for that. You know what I'm saying? And proper accommodation for that would be, proper intelligence, utilizing your brain, in a strategic way in order for you to be most effective in progressing and training, some of these weaknesses, like with intensive, just like when you start training in the weight room, right? You start off with small amounts, and then you progress to higher loads, to higher loads, right? So yeah, time therapy. Time is a very useful tool in terms of training, right? Because now you can set a timer, 30 minutes. That's all we're doing. 15 minutes. That's all we're doing. And we're going to engage in however little time, just, make sure we're maximizing our performance level, right? And then we're going to, come out, you know what I'm saying? And we have incentive on what we're going to do, what we're going to watch or whatever afterwards, right? You know what I'm saying? You may throw on a basketball game or, watch film, whatever you may do, right? But after that, you're giving yourself incentive, like, okay, we did it, and you're rewarding yourself, and you're telling your brain, okay, good work. Now we can sort of meditate, digress, cool down, right? From that. And that's that's important, in terms of incentives there. So that's one thing, that's important. And another thing I want to talk about is when training, there's too many aspects. There's too many aspects of training that need to be accommodated for because of the fact that your mind, in terms of training, right? There's too many different neural pathways that your mind has to, cater to in order to train yourself in every specific way. Sometimes when we talk about resistance training, right? Or I'll say pain tolerance, right? Or patience, pain tolerance, whatever you want to call it. Patience, pain tolerance training versus a more so training, say training yourself in a different way, right? Maybe like stretching or not stretching. Let me see. Hold on. So okay, so pain tolerance, resistance type training versus, I guess, just like, performance-based training, right? Two totally different types of trainings, right? They don't seem too far apart, but mentally, these are two totally different neural pathways, right? So if I'm training myself in too much in terms of pain tolerance over and over again, and all I'm doing is training myself to, exhibit pain tolerance, and I put no effort or, into performance. When I do actually go into training my performance, I'm going to be that far off balance, and it's going to be that much harder for me to train, performance-based things, simply because I've spent so much time over the past few weeks training myself solely in pain tolerance. For instance, another example, balance training versus balance versus I'll say balance training versus mobility slash functional training, right? So now look at these two, right? My balance training, right? I can these are two totally different neural pathways that are being trained, right? And the whole point I'm trying to make is, from all of the list of all of the different neural pathways there is, it's very difficult to maintain a balance in everything. For instance, it's hard to maintain a balance in terms of maintaining or properly coordinating a workout regime, right? That incorporates balance, cardio, strength training, body weight training, calisthenics, movement and mobility work, stretching. It's hard to get a workout plan that incorporates all of these different things, because all of these different things are new or are completely totally go into totally different directions in terms of neuropathic functioning, right? Balance, it requires stability. You have to be in a mental state of stability. You have to be at a spiritual state of stability in order to work on balance, right? And if you're not there, if you can't properly balance. It's that much more difficult to balance. Cardio, you have to be actually up and running, right? You have to be physically active, right? You can't spend too much time. If you spend too much time sitting around, even working on strength training, right? You spend too much time working on strength training, resistance training, or not too much time, but you spend a lot of time working on strength training, resistance training. You got a lot of studying you got to do. Like, your job doesn't allow you to be active or movement. You have no reason to really go and engage in cardio, right? Cardio would be that much more difficult, right? You know what I'm saying? It's going to be it's almost like your brain has put it in the back burner, right? And this is what we mean when we talk about your like, in terms of training, having this many different neuropathic functions going in completely opposite different directions. That's what makes maintenance in training or proper maintenance in training very difficult, right? Strength training, right? Strength training, right? You could be someone on the basketball court. Like, sometimes me, I get in that season where necessarily, well, things make up for it. But sometimes I get in that season where I'm just straight on the basketball court, and that's it. I don't even train. I don't even pick up weights. Sometimes I go that route, right? You can take the route of becoming stronger and just, building strength, right? Of course, on the basketball court. But nowadays, the way the game is played, you can take a different strategy coming at the basketball court with not even lifting at all, just endurance, just staying on the basketball court and just, gaining the endurance that way, right? And you stay on the basketball court and, all day long, dribbling, shooting, running, and you just run. You're getting no strength training in, right? So basically, you're getting no strength training in this way, though, right? And so when you do actually get to the point to where you want to engage back in strength training, it becomes that much more difficult to get back into the techniques of some of these functions, these weight room functions, right? Because you spent so much time off weight rooms and you're engaged fully in cardio, right? So now you're opening an entirely different neural path. You're going in a completely different direction in terms of neuropathic functioning, right? Which is why that becomes that much more difficult, right? Because you're going in a completely different direction with neuropathic functioning, right? It's the same thing with body weight training, right? Body weight training or calisthenics. You know what I'm saying? You can spend a lot of time using the machines all day long, all dang day long, right? You could just use it all the time, utilizing the machines, man. You get off work, you just go in, hit the machines. You may pick up like a dumbbell. But then like after that, it's like, okay, you good. But you can get too comfortable with the machines to the point to where you forget what it's like to, actually get down and do a push-up and actually do some body weight training, right? And once again, this is a completely different direction, of a neural pathway, right? Or neuropathic functioning. It's a completely different direction. So, same thing with movement and mobility. Yep. Same thing with movement and mobility. Same thing, right? A completely different direction. Functional training, completely different direction. Very important, right? Stretching, another one. That's another one, right? If you stay off any of these things for too long, basically is what I'm saying, it becomes that much more difficult to engage in them, right? So it's not even a matter of, maintaining all of them. It's really just a matter of which ones are most pertaining to you at your specific, point in time, and managing those, right? And you know what I'm saying? And there might be a case, and who knows? In some cases, it might be all of them, right? It might be all of them. In some cases, in some cases, that might be management of all of them. But that's where the difficulty lies, right? And now you have to be able to sort of compartmentalize, files, folders, in programs. You have to be able to compartmentalize each individual one of these different directions, whether it's balance, cardio, strength training, body weight, movement, mobility work, stretching, whether it's any of these sort of things, functional training, whatever it may be, right? You got to be able to now sort of compartmentalize and say like, okay, hey, and coordinate when I engage in one of these, engage in one of these different folders, right? So that doesn't even like stop there at it doesn't even stop there at your training, right? Or these, just the tactics of training, whether it's mobility, stretching, or body weight, strength training, cardio, balance, functional. It even goes beyond that to even like your daily habits, like drinking water, hydration. Sometimes hydration can be difficult depending on your state of body, right? The state of your body. It's like if you having like mad headaches and stuff, sometimes, it could make you want to drink water less, or sometimes certain, states of the body or certain mood states, or certain body states or certain mental mind states could cause you to want to drink water less, right? And there could be some times where you want to drink water more and you just can't stop drinking water. You know what I'm saying? That's another thing. Fasting. Sometimes, man, you get into a state where, you're in a fasting state, right? You constantly fasting, and fasting is just, what you do. Or, you might be in a state of just eating, constantly eating, right? And it's just another thing, right? It's a different type of pathway, right? Your brain is in a whole different state, right? Or you could be in a state of, being able to meditate every day, right? And just take time to meditate really well, right? And you're not really engaged in many of the of the technology stuff, right? Right? You're in a meditation and you're sort of separating, right? Or you might be in a state of studying, right? Studying, you're always just trying to learn new information, and sometimes you get out of that state where you're not trying to study like that. You're on to other things, right? Doing, right? When you're physically doing things, right? You're engaged in something where you get up in the morning. It don't matter what time in the morning you get up, and you're automatically in that thing, whatever you're doing, right? And then, most of the time you're out. Most of the time you're in that outlet. But then when you come out of that outlet, you're meditating on what you did in that outlet, right? And you're in that state of doing, right? Like that. Sometimes you might be in a state of socializing, right? Or being more sociable with around others, just, talking and communicating with others and that sort of thing. And you're just always interacting with others and being that sort of sociable. Sometimes you might be separated from everybody and you just in your craft, right? You crafted, you didn't separate yourself because you got some sort of craft that you're doing that you need space to be able to meditate or be able to do, right? Or you might be in a state of, being in a state of being more professional in a technical sense, right? You have a technical outlet that you do, right? It might be a service or a business that you have to cater to. So you have to be in that mind state of technicalities, right? On a professional level, right? That state of mind, and you just have to be very technical and professional about everything that you do, right? Making sure that you're being efficient, right, in everything you do, right? That professional mindset and communication. And then there's times where, you might be in a state of being lax or being laxative or more communicative in a more friendly sense, right? About friends and families and engaging with others and that sort of things. The interactive state, right? You know what I'm saying? However long you stay in that state. Well, I mean, that's a state that people are going to, but, that's another one, right? I guess like interaction with others to the point to where you're being, friendly, I guess, or overly, what's it called? You kind of like let your guard down. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're kind of like, you're not on business, but you're like around friends or acquaintances or just folks that you just around, and you're like, on a sort of like deeper interactive level, like, that sort of thing, right? Or you're being, strategic, even with intelligence. Sometimes like you're strategic and intelligent in everything that you do, and and you think through things, right? Or sometimes you might be in a state to where you're aggressive, and you're being more aggressive and more willful in a sense to where you're more so do-oriented than you are intellectual oriented, right? That's two totally different things as well. We see that now, nowadays people are more intellectually engaged in sort of like strategic, in their thinking, than they are in what they do, right? And then you have, you have other things, right? Even when in terms of studying, right? Sometimes you might be in a state of work, and it just might be a state of, okay, I'm engaged in work. All I want to be around is work. All I want to be around is certain, things, professional things, right? And sometimes I might just not be what I might want to just be around video games, right? I might just want to be around that sort of type of energy, right? And it's like, again, these are all just mental pathways. Like where, are we at with our mental pathways, right? And then sometimes we want to be reading and listening to stories, right? Like history, right? Sometimes our neural pathways goes that way, and we just, sometimes it might be we already, into science and health and wellness, right? You know what I'm saying? It might be into science and health and wellness in our body and nutrition and the vitamins and minerals and, all calcium and all this sort of thing, right? We're learning these sorts of things. And, sometimes that's where our pathways go, right? And that's where we're on, right? And then of course, you have the mind state of innovating, being creative, being an artist, being a creator. And then you have competing, right? You have the competing mind frame where you just trying to compete against others, right? For me, of course, that takes the form of on the basketball court. I'm trying to kill anything in sight, right? But at the end of the day, all of these things are different. Pathways that you kind of like engage in. So it's like when you really break everything down, you get to a point to where it's like, okay, understanding. Okay, so I want to go here. There might be a place that I'm trying to go specifically, and it's just understanding that each and every single one of these individual pathways that your brain can really go deep into could come with a sacrifice of one of these other neural pathways that are very vital and very important, right? So it's very important to understand that, some things are lost that are vital because everything I just said or everything I just named is vital. But it's like some things get lost amongst others in certain moments or certain, it can be lost within certain seasons, right? And sometimes these things, it's very more complex trying to manage all of these different things, especially when you actually get down to the point to where you're trying to do that. And stay balanced in that way. So that's the important thing to understand. Regarding organization and regarding that sort of thing, right? It becomes very much more complex when you're trying to actually manage, a lot of these other things, and keep that sort of and maintain that sort of maintenance, right? Because they're all different neural pathways. They're all different neuropathic functions. So if you indulge in one, right, and like say strength training and cardio, you're going to lose out on balance. Balance is going to be that much harder to because it's an entirely different neuropathic function. It's like an entirely different it's like trying to look right and left at the same time, and the only way to look right and left at the same time is you look right, then you look left. You know what I'm saying? Like it comes with conscious implementation and sort of calculated implementation of when you look each way. So that's what I wanted to say in regards to training. Very vital, very important. All this stuff, definitely important. I definitely would jot down some notes and, write down some of that stuff because it was a lot. So the other thing we do want to talk about, we did have a few other things we did want to discuss in this video, but that was one of the major ones that I really wanted to talk about, right, is organization and just all the different types of neural pathways that the brain actually goes to make sure that it's balancing each outlet, or every, balancing majority or, however many, majority of these states, right? It's a little bit more complex and it requires a more complex set of regimes to do, right? The other thing I did want to talk about, and it's huge, is just like, for some people, like, organization is important because you don't want to forget resources. I'll say it like this, right? Organization is important, right? Or it's always important to be organized because, man, people hit you with new information and stuff, and it make you forget that like a lot of the stuff that they saying, like a lot of the stuff that already that folks talk about, and it's like it's already things that you done already might have spoken on and sort of stuff that you might already got together, right? And then somebody can sort of say it or bring it up, and it's just something that something you already it could be something that's just on the far side of your mind. Just like we talk about with neural pathways, right? It could be something that's on the far end of your mind, or that was on the other other side of that had was on the what's the word I'm looking for? It was on the opposite. It was in the other direction of your mind, right? At the time. So it's like, my thing is, right, files, folders in programs, are important because now it's like we're stacking wealth, or AKA we're stacking resources, right? A lot of times, man, like, I know me, I'm a victim of this, right? This is for certain people. I do want to throw this out here. We're changing subjects. I want to throw this out here. For some people, man, like, I had a tendency to go into seasons like I don't know anything, or go into seasons and straightway forget the resources that I already had to get me by, these seasons. And had I just fallen back on my seasons, or had I just fallen back on them times, and had the confidence and esteem to, fall back on what I already know and what I already have, this wouldn't be a problem. Like, and then these things and some of these, outlets or things that I get into wouldn't be a problem at all. They would just be fluent, and they would just be functional. But sometimes, man, I have a problem with trying to challenge myself too much, by sort of stripping myself of my own resources just to try to train something, right? Sometimes, like, how you sometimes train your left hand, and you train you solely your right hand, and you kind of marginalizing muscles and neurons, and you just training yourself that way. Yeah, I think it's a very bad thing, because you get so comfortable training yourself that way that you get to a point to where you make it a habit of doing that, and then you forget the resources that you have when them times when you actually need it. And then it can get really bad, especially when you don't notice it, because now, you could be, dealing with an entire season that could have never, took place if you just utilized your own resources. But, you so programmed to marginalize yourself and make things more challenging for yourself. If I had to say one thing, like, in terms of advice, just point blank period for anybody, permanent advice, like, totally, like, I'm literally just, this is just it. Like, you can take this one to the bank from me, and off my failures, it is literally, keep it simple, and don't make things more harder than what they need to be, right? You know what I'm saying? Even if it's for training purposes, like training like marginalizing muscles and neurons, right? I wouldn't recommend that, marginalizing muscles and neurons, right? That's my advice. Do not marginalize muscles and neurons. Use them together collectively, because when you get into a function, you're going to be using them all together anyway, right? So there's no point in marginalizing muscles ever. It doesn't make sense. It don't make sense. Just use it all interchangeably. And that's sort of well, I guess sort of my number one lesson that I have for y'all right there. It's the marginalizing of neurons. Don't do it. Do not marginalize neurons because they can easily become a habit, and you could easily get into a situation to where now you're not utilizing your own wealth and resources and not living up to the standards of, what you see for yourself. And you're not figuring out why. It's because you're not using all the resources that you have, and you done made it a habit of marginalizing neurons in order to get some sort of training, extra training. Don't do it. It ain't worth it. You know what I'm saying? And it's that notion of training, right? And another thing with training, right, too, right? In terms of training, because this is all training stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because how you train is how you, that's where it starts, right? So the other thing is literally, I'll say doing too much. Like, you know what I'm saying? You have a number, go into that number. And then if you can keep going, I wouldn't even recommend keep going. I would recommend stopping at the number. And at maximum doing around 3 extra reps, or, just being able to calculate, I'm not doing very much. I'm not doing really anything after the number, right? I'm going to the number. Honestly, that's just it. That's what I wish, that's the one thing I recommend and that I wish I definitely did, right? For the most part, is proper gauging and proper, sort of decision making when to just go to the number, which is the majority of times, in those rare times when to actually go up an extra 3 reps, right? And progress a bare minimum of reps upward, right? So that's the second thing, right? It's always best to go to the number because that's a habit you're building, right? You're not just training your body. When you go down and do 24 push-ups, that's the misconception. When you go down and do 24 push-ups, that's not physical, that's mental. You're training neurons. And if you train your neurons to say like, okay, I'm going to go down and do 24 reps, and then you go down and do 36, or you're going to do 50, now you're training, now you're training your mind or your brain to not go according to what you said you was going to do, but to something else, right? Now you're not training your neurons to necessarily pour the adequate amount of energy into what you intended on doing. You put more energy into it, right? And that is not a good thing, and that's a very dangerous habit right there. Is that overly extending habit? That's a very dangerous habit. And I would definitely recommend watching that as well. Because now when you get into something else, right, you ain't got the energy to do it, right? You may have two totally different things that you want to do, right? And if I do 50 something reps, I'm not going to have energy to come into this next season and do what I need to do here. You know what I'm saying? And there you go. You know what I'm saying? So that was the other thing right there, right? That was probably the biggest one, actually. Shoot, that was that was a more personal one. Yeah. I think that's about it. And the last one I got for y'all, other than that one, right there with going to the number, right? Going to the number, right? Very crucial. Very, very crucial, man, because like you could have things that you know what I'm saying? Going to the number is very crucial because that's training yourself to, on a deeper level, follow your dreams. It's training you, it's training yourself to follow your dreams and your vision, right? And your imagination, what you want to do, what you envision yourself doing, right? Because if I go to 24, I envision myself doing 24 reps. So I go down and I do 24 reps, nothing else, nothing more. I go into this other workout. I envision myself doing this amount. Okay, I do 24 reps of this. I pick up the dumbbells and I'm doing chest press, right? Okay, I go down and I make sure I do my 24, right? Chest press. Okay, now I go in and I go in and do legs, right? I do leg raises, right? Or leg press. Okay, I'm going in and I'm doing my 12 or I'm doing my 24, just like that. And now when I come up with a game plan, and now when I come up with a program and a strategy in terms of, okay, today I'm going to wake up and do push-ups, chest press, and leg press, right? And then afterward, I'm going to go engage in this activity. I can go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to stop at 24 reps here. I'm going to stop at 24 reps here. I'm going to stop at 12 reps here. And I'm going to go straight into what I want to do. And now mentally, I can sort of compartmentalize and train myself to like execute on actions and plans that I have to go to my, to my day-to-day life. And that's the whole purpose of training in the first place. Training isn't for the necessary purpose of training. Training is to train you and prepare you for life, right? So that's why we go to the number and not past the number, right? Because training is for the purpose, like we said, of training you for life, right? So that's why the number is important, and that sort of thing. So the last one I got for y'all in this video right here, because we're not gonna try to do too much in this podcast, is I want to say continuous training versus duration based continuous training versus time and attention. This tactic, right? So now, when we talk about training, right? Just because there's a lot of things I do want to say. Like, there's a lot of things I do want to say in this podcast. But, man, there's a lot of things I want to say, man. Even more so going into compartmentalizing, right? But I'll say this, right? In a sense to where, we train ourselves, right? Of course, we want to, training ourselves, time and attention is important, right? Especially, like I say all the time, right? Time and attention is good for developing yourself in terms of when you're trying to build something, right? You come at it each day, time and attention style, right? For 1 hour, I'm going to engage in this. The next day, I'm going to come in for 1 hour and I'm engaged in this, right? And you can sort of forget about it until you come back into it the next day. You know what I'm saying? And that could be time and attention. But the other, and that's how you can build upward, right? And build something. But the other method of training, that we don't talk about too much is the duration-based training, or, the progressive training. To where, when was the last time you heard somebody say, I'm going to do 100 push-ups by 10 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? I got 100 push-ups to do, or 1,000 push-ups, my bad. I'm going to do 1,000 push-ups by 10 o'clock, right? That's a whole different sort of mental training right there. That's a whole you're working a completely different neuropathic. That's a whole different neuropathic science going on. You know what I'm saying? That method of training. I'm gonna train to, I'm gonna do 1,000 push-ups within this time frame. So now, within each probably 15 minutes, I'm going down doing a certain number of push-ups, right? Until I get to the point to, where I'm getting to 1,000, right? Every 15 minutes, I'm going down and do some push-ups. Or every 15 minutes, I'm doing some squats. Or, every hour, I'm making sure I drop down and and give 20. Stop down and give me 20 every hour, on the hour. It's a different sort of training. And what this is doing is this is normalizing athleticism. Just like I said in my previous video, I say in terms of duration-based training or progressive training, you become the training. The training becomes you. time and attention based training is something that scales something that you're building upward, right? And that's the difference between the two, or at least that's what I'd like to say. So these are just some different methods of training, and the question is like, what types of training would I do progressive based training, especially when I have certain things I want to progress to? What type of trainings would I do that's progressive based training, and what type of trainings would I do that's time and attention based? You know what I'm saying? And that's my final question, right? Say if I wanted to build muscle, I'm gonna build. If I go into the gym, right? Because you can have different reasons for going into the gym or the weight room specifically. You could go into the weight room specifically to relieve stress, or you could go into the weight room to build muscle, right? And if you're going to build muscle, you have to build muscle time and attention using the proper techniques, proper form. You know what I'm saying? And proper utilization of, eating habits, like eating. I learned this from my brother. He said, eat 45 minutes, within 45 minutes after working out, that sort of thing. Right. And, and that's, would be how you would build muscle. Right. Certain things that you have to fall in line with, going to sleep at the right time, which is what I'm breaking right now. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm, a little bit I'm tired of, which I need to get back right with, which I've been trying to, seriously, going to sleep at the right time. That way you can wake up, right? And there are certain things that you do that help reset your body. This is very important, right? So when I talked about state of being, remember when I talked about state of being and how difficult it is to sometimes engage in some of these activities due to your mental state of being, right? Your body. So when you progress in certain outlets, right? Whether it be in history, whether it be in health and wellness, whether it be in like nature, whether it be in whatever it may be, whether it be in sports, whether it be in outlets or avenues or whatever, your business, whatever these things may be, it'd be much more difficult to engage in it simply due to your state of being and state of mental, right? That they can have a heavily dictation on your pull, right? So with that being said, right? So it can all depend on motivation wise. I'll say like your motivation to sort of, go into the functions you need to go into, right? On the other hand, but, what I wanted to say here is in this regard, so the point being is that with as difficult as it may be to get into some of these things, you have to you have to literally try to you have to do things at a certain time, sleep at a certain time. There's got to be certain things that line up and put your body in a consistent state of functioning, that way you can have consistent results. Because if you going to sleep at inconsistent times could cause you to be motivated when you wake up in inconsistent ways. Eating habits, I guess, at certain times, certain foods, eating habits at, or just meals, I'll say, for meals specifically, and dieting in some dieting is a lot more specific though, right? That's a lot more specific and more detailed, but in some cases, in some ways, dieting as well could have an impact on Motivation in terms of what you engage in. I almost want to say, like, you know, when you do certain things, like when you shower, when you do certain things, right? All of this, you know, certain things can have an effect on motivation to do other things, right? And I could have put that better. I could have put that a lot better, but yeah, but yeah, and this is important to watch. So, you know, going to sleep at the correct time, something that I need to do. You know, eating at the correct time, and you know, work, because going to sleep at the correct time, period, right there alone will line up so many other things. And it's like, if you want to be consistent in what you do, you know what I'm saying? And if you have like goals and visions and dreams in terms of like what you want to progress to, you have to be consistent with certain things. So that way the motivation and the neurons, the mind, you know, the mental state that you want to be at kind of lines up with what you're trying to progress to. Like your mind has to line up with whatever it is, or your mental state has to line up with whatever it is that you're trying to progress to in order to get there, right? And that comes from when you go to sleep, when you eat, and it's like certain things like that, you know, that'll line up your mental state, just like we talked about with balance, right? Just like we talked about with balance and strength training and cardio. Like if you do strength training and cardio, doing balance is like going the complete opposite direction, right? It's for your mind, like mentally, for your neural pathways, it's like going the complete opposite direction. It's the same thing. It's all based on your state of mind and state of being, or state of, you know, mental, right? And certain things you have to do in order to line yourself up with certain things you're trying to progress to. And sleep is probably the most is one of the most important ones, right? If not the most important one, right? For motivation purposes, right? So just consider that and keep that in mind, that certain things that you want to do and certain things that you want to progress to, you know, it would be best, or you know, to have a consistent frame of mind that kind of engages you in the activities, you know, or kind of, you know, insinuates you, and kind of pushes you towards, or just, you know, you can gravitate towards, you know, those outlets, that you need to, you know, gravitate towards, and those things you need to gravitate towards in order to do that. But anyway, yeah, that's going to conclude this message in this video right here. Peace, love, and we out this joint.